Hey guys, in today's video we're going to talk about lead arm supination, when to do it, how much to do it, and why it's a commonality amongst all great players. All right guys, let's talk about lead arm supination. Now, let's define what supination is, and then let's go into the details of how do you do it, when to do it, and why it's an important part for really solid ball striking. So let's define what lead arm supination is. So from the face-on perspective, when I say lead arm supination, if you were to kind of just hold your left arm for a right-handed golfer, lead arm out in front of you, palm facing to the right, from my view, if you were to take that arm and make it go palm up, that's supination. That's all it is. It's going from here to here, that little move right there. So a lot of us in the golf community would just call that forearm rotation. In fact, the whole arm can supinate. So there is a supination of the arm from the elbow joint to the wrist that makes that palm go up. That's more specifically the forearm rotation part we're talking about. But in reality, there's the whole shoulder, right, can supinate. So the whole left arm or lead arm can supinate. That's the move I'm talking about. During your downswing, the hand going from where it is in space to more of a palm up position is supination. Okay, so let's talk about when that happens, how to do it, and why all the great players do it. So when we're talking supination from our normal setup position, during the backswing, the lead arm is basically pronating, or the opposite of supination, the whole time. So there's no supinating going on during the backswing. Okay, when we're talking about it, what it really is from the top of the backswing down to and through impact. So a couple of things just to keep in mind here off the bat with this is when I'm talking arm supination, I think a lot of people are worried about, hey, or think they shouldn't rotate their arm that much. They should be just thinking about what their body does. They're not supposed to be very handsy. They're not supposed to have a lot of arm interaction, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. If you look at measurements on something like a gear system or anything that measures three-dimensionally how good players work, you'll notice that oftentimes, almost across the board from the reports I've seen, the best players in the world and the better ball strikers supinate their lead arm more than the average amateur golfer. That is, in simple terms, the better golfers have more forearm rotation during their downswing follow-through than you do watching the video. And most of you guys come in and say, hey, I don't want to rotate my forearms. I'm not supposed to rotate my forearms. The best players don't do that. Well, that's not true. They do it, and they do it more than you do it. So something to keep in mind. Now, when to do it and how to do it. From the top of my backswing, okay, if I'm in just a normal top of backswing position, as I begin down during my downswing, in the early phases of the downswing, there's not going to be a ton of supination, but it happens sooner than we would expect. If you actually watch a measurement of a good player, that lead arm is starting to supinate pretty darn early in the downswing. Okay, now oftentimes I'll have players who, really feel like the supination is happening a lot sort of during the second half of the downswing into the golf ball and past the ball is when you would feel it more. But in reality, if you're trying to have that thing rotate by impact, your brain's beginning that process starting pretty early in the downswing. Usually, better players are supinating earlier than amateur golfers. They are rotating their arms sooner in the downswing than an amateur player. Typically, amateur players would have more of the supination down near and at impact relative to a better player. That's also because their wrist angles are usually better. There's other variables involved with that. If you have a club face that's way open, you're trying to save it a lot at the bottom. So there's other variables there. But more or less, there's a lot of lead arm supination. Don't even just take my opinion for that. If you check any sort of gear system, that will confirm that. Now, what I want you to think about in terms of how you're doing this, if I were to get into a position when I get down to last parallel, okay? So when I get the club parallel to the ground for the last time, and we were to look at the back of my left hand or the logo of my glove, is going to point more or less straight away from me at this position. Now, think about how much I have to rotate my arms here at this point. My left hand from that position needs to go from straight away from me to square to the target, and then it needs to go to the left. So if I were to do that from face on here and show you those same positions, by the time I get to last parallel, my glove would be facing towards the camera, and then by impact it would be facing towards the target or slightly angled depending upon your grip, and then it would be facing to the left. What does that mean? That means my left hand goes from here. By the time the club's here already, So my hands are very close to the golf ball, and it's rotating from here to here to here. My hand's going from here to here in that period of time. Now, I think if a lot of you looked at that, you would think, man, that's way more hand action, arm action than I want to feel, than I'm supposed to feel. Well, no, that's exactly what it needs to be. If you watch good players, watch them here, last parallel, gloves away from them. At impact, it's at the target or pointed slightly to the right, depending on the grip, and then it's pointed to the left. So you're rotating there. I'm calling that 90 degrees. I'm not sure if that's right or not from there, but it's a lot. It's a lot. From here, pointed away from me, to here. That's the point. That's what I want you to start with. Put a club in your hands and get down the last parallel. Get the grip pointed away from you and get it from there to pointed to the left past impact. That's how much rotation your arm should feel. Now, if that feels like a lot to you, then you probably don't do enough. If that feels like nothing at all, then maybe you have more than you need in there, okay? But from here to there. So that's the checkpoint. You feel whatever is required to go from those positions. More often than not, I would prefer to throw more lead arm supination in someone's swing than not enough, okay? I very, very, very rarely will see someone who has too much lead arm supination. To me, it's a commonality amongst good players. If you watch a good golfer sort of just hanging out on the tee box and they take a club in their left hand, you'll oftentimes just see them kind of doing something like this. Right? Now, what is that? What is this motion? That's the lead forearm supinating, right? Watch the PGA Tour guys this weekend or whenever, and watch what they do here. And they're going from a position where their glove is pointed away from them to the left or slightly down towards the ground. I would rather, when you come through and you make a swing, see the glove, the logo on your glove, point way down towards the ground than point up towards the sky. Unless you have a incredibly strong grip, and then you can do that, you want to have your hands rotating. How much? A lot, okay? Now, the more you rotate your forearms or supinate from down the line, what does that actually do to the club? Well, the majority of what that does is it acts to square the club face, right? Or close the club face to the plane if I were to get to and past impact. So what I would do compared to normal and start to train this in, how do I know, Eric, if I'm supposed to add supination or not? Well, first, pose those positions away from you, left hand, back hand to the target, and to the left, and see what that feels like compared to normal, and then try some. So if I were just to hit some little tiny half ones, kind of feeling that amount of forearm rotation, and I'm gonna see where the golf ball goes. So that, for me, the ball went pretty straight. Now, how are you gonna know whether you have enough supination or not enough supination? What's your judge of that? I'm assuming you don't have a gears or AMM system. You're not placing things on your body to check degrees per second there, okay? Your judgment is mostly on ball flight. Meaning, I'm going to tell you there's going to be a correlation between how much you supinate and where the face is pointed. And or, if you supinate too much, if you rotate your forearms too much, it increases the odds of the ball going to the left. So pulls mostly, or hooks to the left. If you don't have enough supination, it increases the odds of you hitting the ball to the right. So how do you apply this to yourself? If you're someone who hits the ball too far to the right, okay, consistently, whether it's a push or a slice or whatever, now first, you got to be checking the grip, you got to be checking backswing stuff. I'm assuming all those things are in place, which they're probably not, so make sure your grip, backswing's in place. But assuming those things, if you're hitting the ball too far to the right, then you better add some supination. How much? Keep adding it until you hit some balls to the left, right? And you feel, oh, man, that feels like I'm really supinating. Well, that's great. You're not, the ball's going straight, right? So you have a normal amount of supination relative to your grip and wrist conditions, okay? If you're a guy or girl who hits the ball way to the left or hooks it, then you probably don't need to add as much supination. This isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. You're adding it in as much as needed or not needed. So that's the deal, non-scientific. Supination squares the face. It does other things too, but it squares the face mostly. If you're struggling with right shots, have more. If you hit it left, don't do it as much. How do you do it? Take your hand here, turn it palm up, do that in a swinging motion, understanding that glove away from you, glove behind you is the stock. Correlate feels for that, adjust it per your ball flight. Most of you need to add supination. We know that the better players have more supination. Very few of you need to take supination out. Stop being afraid to use your arms and hands. You can use them probably more than you think until you get to the point where you're breaking 80 all the time or better and hitting big hooks. You could use your arms and hands about as much as you want. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please click the like button down below. Click the notification bell if you haven't already. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you have any questions, as always, leave us a comment down below.